IPUT Real Estate is Dublin's leading property investment company. For almost 60 years, a custodian of the city embracing excellence in design, sustainability and occupier experience. More than that, IPUT understands that real change means transforming how valuable, vibrant and loved a neighbourhood is. Discover how they build and invest. Head to iput.com now and learn about their passion for their projects and their unique presence in Dublin. IPUT, creator of exceptional places, custodian of the city.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of The Urbanist, Monocle's programme all about the built environment. I'm your host, Andrew Tuck. Coming up.
An office is an office is an office. What makes an office or a location or a workplace a place is that emotional connection, that human interest. And I think unless you have that, you can't differentiate yourself.
Today we explore Wilton Park, one of the flagship projects from IPUT, Dublin's leading property investment company. Spanning a whopping 600,000 square feet, the development has been carefully assembled by IPUT over the past decade. And while at first glance this might look like just another great office project, take a closer look and dedication to placemaking and quality of life starts to emerge. A 1-acre park open to the public connects the entire project. New pathways and public furniture along the canal extend the public realm, and even artist studios are there to help propel a new wave of talent in the city. To explore it all, Monocle's Carter Rebello headed to the Irish capital to hear how Wilton Park can act as a catalyst for change in the city. This is The Urbanist.
It takes more than just great architecture and design to create a new part of a city. Sure, those help, but having a long-term vision, attention to detail and a true sense of community tend to be the details that make all the difference. Which is why I wanted to stop by Wilton Park in Dublin to see how it aims to do precisely that. Despite the mildly grey sky on arrival, the area was busy. People running along the canal, sitting in the park having a chat, meetings by the coffee van in the square, and a constant flow of pedestrian traffic. The neighbourhood was full of life. It's no wonder then that 3 global firms, LinkedIn, Stripe and EY, have all chosen Wilton Park for the new headquarters. My guide for this peek behind the scenes is Niall Gaffney, IPUT's chief executive.
Wilton Park is exactly as it says in the tin. It's a park. It's a triangular 1-acre park next to the Grand Canal in Dublin. It was historically known as Bagatonia, a Georgian residential area, synonymous with great writers, artists. It was a cheap place to live back in the 50s and 60s. So people like Patrick Kavanagh, Brendan Behan, and obviously Mary Lavin. And we've named a square here after Mary Lavin. So we have demolished 1980s office precinct that had become quite sterile, very 9 to 5, 5 days a week. The park was locked at the weekends. We have gone and redeveloped that into a 600,000 square foot mixed use development centred around the 1-acre park and overlooking the canal. And we renovated and opened the park before we completed the office development or the mixed use development. We reopened the park and we put 80 deck chairs in, and that small gesture was probably the most impactful gesture that we've done in terms of placemaking and establishing Wilton Park as a place in the local community, in people's consciousness.
Was that a signal that was so important to, I guess, establish trust from the very beginning?
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. The first thing we did to build trust was to reopen the park. We had a fountain, a Victorian fountain in the middle of the park that was filled with soil and plants. It was effectively neglected. So we, in our planning process, committed to restore the fountain. So today we now have a working fountain, beautifully finished, lit at night. We have new walkways, gravelled walkways, completely new planting regime that's got great seasonality, but it's got 7 days a week access. And I think we've just let the neighbourhood just rediscover the park.
My name is Christopher Kelly. I live in the Mews, 1 Lad Lane, Dublin 2. I've lived here for 20 years. I have 3 kids, 1 wife and a dog. Over 20 years, in some ways, the lane had not really changed that much. Obviously, the old building would have effectively turned its back to the lane. You know, it would have ignored the lane and it would have looked out to the front. The lane would have nearly been seen as a negative. While this building does not turn its back to the lane, it overlooks the lane. It's substantially increased the public realm in terms of the size of the footpaths. Obviously, the whole road has been resurfaced. So just practically the change now in the last 5 years, or the change in the last 2 years as the building is kind of coming to an end, has actually been really kind of important for me, because little things like broken car windows don't happen anymore. Like, I used to see broken car windows every 2 weeks in the lane. I've had that car smashed into, I'd say, 4 or 5 times. It hasn't happened over the last few years because the lane has got busier, it's got people overlooking the lane. So that practically kind of security has been a huge improvement. So it's the activity and the multi-use activity, i.e. there's people here in the evening, there's people here in the morning, there's people here in the daytime. And that multi-use activity is the thing that, in my opinion, brings, kind of a good public realm and a good, safe environment for people to be out in. But so huge improvements just practically for the residents, huge improvements.
One could maybe think that having a big building show up next to, low-rise established properties, that could cause some friction. But perhaps because of not turning its back towards the lanes, having the park that's open to the public, Definitely. All of that has helped to avoid that scenario.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like you do have a 6-7-story building fronting onto 2-story muses. So in some ways that's not maybe what people would expect. But look, I'm in the middle of Dublin City here. If I think I'm going to have cottages around me, I'm in the wrong place. This is a European capital city, and I am personally pro-development, and this is to me a great example of being pro-development, what you can get as a result of that. Now, to be fair, IPUT were very good during construction looking after me, in terms of practical things like cleaning cars, noise complaints, things like that. They were at a human level good. So no, to me, that friction you talk about kind of can't exist in a city, because in a city we have to kind of expect change, expect growth, expect things to go up rather than to stay the same.
Now, we're here standing right in front of the gate for the muse, and as soon as you open them, you see the art in the covered passageway.
I do, yeah.
Has that impacted your mood? Like, we often hear about, landscaping and art helping people, feel better about where they live. How has that impacted you?
No, I do love the piece of art there, which is kind of unique. And I remember being in a meeting with IPUT and a reference was made to some kind of surprise, and I didn't really lodge at the time, but when I saw the piece of art, whatever, maybe a few months later, I understood what the gentleman from IPUT was saying to me. But in an odd way, the two things that I most enjoy here, which is going to sound a little bit funny, is there's a man who goes around with an outdoor vacuum cleaner on the lane, hoovering up, the leaves and all the stuff like that. And if you look at the lane, it's quite clean actually. And the other thing is the lads power hosing. The lads are constantly power hosing. And I'm sitting in there and I'm hearing the sound of someone power hosing on a Friday and vacuuming the lane going, I've nothing to do, because historically I would have to come out and brush the lane and, just to clean my area, my section type of thing, if it got too messy, because you'd be waiting a long time for someone else to do it. So they are two things that I do love, the outdoor vacuum cleaner and the power washing, But yes, all the landscaping and all that are beautiful as well. And, I do like to point out to people that this is all looked after by somebody else. This has got nothing to do with me, immaculately looked after, so that's the benefits of having a high quality development beside you, and long may it last,
We're doing some research called Make an Impact, which is trying to establish over a 5-year period what the impact of this placemaking, this investment in public realm over and above the norm has done to improve the socio-economic value of the neighbourhood. We're measuring footfall, we're measuring both good and bad reaction to things we did. Like when we closed the park, there was a very negative reaction, obviously. We've reopened the park, it's been quite positive. But equally, the sculptures we put in, the water in the fountain, the resurfacing of the dog park, that it's an all-weather dog park, all of these incremental changes have had a positive impact and built trust with the local neighbourhood, but also with people using the buildings. They can see we're for real, that we're here for the long term, and we want to see good outcomes. We want to see quality of life improve for everybody in the neighbourhood.
My name is Marie Hunt and I'm Head of Research at IPUT. The study is called Making Impact, and we really feel this development is making impact in the city in a few different ways. We've always looked at it through the prism of 4 key pillars, so economic, environmental, social and cultural, because we felt that it's a blend of all of these things that make a great place. And while we have many buildings in our portfolio, this particular development was the ideal one to use as a test case for this study, because we were going to be involved for a number of years, and we had an idea of doing a longitudinal study where we could track performance over time. And really what we're trying to do is to quantify the impact when you do public realm and placemaking really well. What are the impacts of that? And usually when people do social value assessments or studies, it's at a particular point in time, maybe to support a planning application or something like that. So what's different about this study is we are committing to do it for 5 years. We've published 2 reports already. We're about to publish the year 3 results, but we've 2 more years to go. And I always describe it almost like a jigsaw, in that the pieces are all coming together. We're getting really good results. And also a key part of the study is we learn what's working, what's not working, and we can make amendments to the scheme then based on the feedback we're getting for the local community.
What are some of the learnings you've had so far about what is working for the community, what the community wants?
Well, right behind us in the park here is a dog park. So when we started doing the initial research in year 1, we discovered that quite a lot of the local community have dogs, and this was the only green space that was available to them. So we had, on the one hand, trying to attract more children into the park, on the other hand, lots of dogs off leashes running around the park. So we came up with the idea of hiving off this special area as a bespoke dog park, which would contain all of the dogs in that particular area, and the owners are really happy with it because it allows them to let their dogs off the leash and run free. And it has worked really, really well. But that's just one example of something where we tweaked the design based on the feedback we were getting both from intercept surveys and also discussions with the local stakeholders and the local community.
And also there was that interesting moment where you had to close the park and then you reopened it and you saw how the community reacted to that too.
Yeah, and that was probably a challenging thing for us to do. So in the year 1 report, we had really good public reaction, 8.7 out of 10 in terms of public perception of the space and the public realm here. And when we closed the park, inevitably public perception went down. We were in the midst of construction. The park was closed for about a year. So that amenity was taken away from the public, and we saw public perception going down to 6.5. So it was difficult for us to see perception of our scheme going back. But we did it because we felt that it would deliver in the long term. And thankfully, when we've done the year 3 research, it's gone back up to 9.3. So it's higher than it was to start with. And the other thing is the number of unique visitors to the park and the general area has doubled since we started this study.
What has surprised you the most when making this study?
We've had lots of really interesting learnings. I suppose the one that always resonates with me is that sometimes to do public realm and placemaking really well, you don't necessarily have to spend a huge amount of money, because some of the initiatives that haven't cost a lot have probably been the most impactful. And an example of that would be the deck chairs that you see in front of you here in the park. I know it's something you'd see regularly in London parks, but it's not something we've seen in an Irish context until we started to do it here. And it proves hugely popular, particularly in good weather. That's a really simple intervention that had big impact. So I suppose that was a key learning from the study. I think we've also learned as well that to do public realm and placemaking really well, you also need to have governance, and you also need to curate the space. So we would often have events here during the summer. So we would have events for dogs in the dog park. We would have yoga running throughout the summer. There's been lots of cultural events. So it's not good enough to put public realm in place and then just leave it. You absolutely need to govern the park and curate it over time to have maximum impact.
The attraction of global occupiers like Stripe, this is their dual global HQ in Dublin, into a landmark building, number 1 Wilton. EY have moved here, they're now fitting out. It's their first move in 40 years in Dublin. Again, they hope to have 2,000 people working here, and then we've LinkedIn in the balance. So we've got 3 global brands attracted to this location. And what's attracting them is that quality of life, that opportunity to have engagement 7 days a week with nature, with stimulation, and with a partner in IPUT that believes in long-term human-centred design.
My name is Chris Gallagher. I am the Regional Director for Workplace Operations for LinkedIn. We've been based here for 15 years. Originally as a startup, we started in Sir John Rogerson's Quay. Then we reached about 40 people, and in roughly 2010 took over a floor of the old Wilton Plaza building. So this has been our home for many years. We subsequently built Wilton 5 in the corner, and then when IPUT purchased the rest of the portfolio, they shared with us our plans to develop. So the real estate team then did a deal to lease actually all 4 buildings at that time. Now we've scaled that back to kind of 1.5 buildings, so we've 4 and half of building 3. At the moment we have approximately 1,800 employees. We'd also have another maybe 200 contractors and then another 200 to 250 on-site services.
It is really interesting to hear just the scale of it, because obviously we know that working in a city has changed so much post-pandemic, what that looks like. And this commitment, still being in an office of quality that is delivering something to the city is interesting to see.
Yeah.
How does that work for the company internally? How does that help with employee culture, community building within the team?
Yeah.
Talk to us a bit about the importance of the location.
I'm biased. I think we're in one of the most beautiful parts of the city. We've the canal right in front of us and we're sitting in a beautiful park. And now we have 5 stunning buildings behind us. And we're nicely nestled in the outskirts of the CBD. So from a commute point of view, it's quite easy. So I actually drive in the mornings, but you have the Lewis and the Dart kind of either side, and then there's plenty of bus corridors. So in terms of physically getting people into the office, it really, really works well. Our employees are relatively young. Most are in their early to mid-30s now. So socially, the location is really important. So if they want to go socialise in Bagot Street or if they want to go into the city centre, it's really easy for them to do that. Apart from that, we've world-class facilities. So we're very spoilt. We have a very good food and beverage programme, which is free for employees. There's very few reasons not to come into the office, and there's gyms, etc. as well, and lots of parking.
Now, of course, having F&B for employees could be tricky when in a development they're trying to build F&B for people to come in as well. But it's much more than that, isn't it? Even today, walking around, we saw so much of, from the coffee van over there, from this very park, people who do not even work in the area come in and use the space. Does that really help in this, feeling of being connected to the city, in having not just an exclusive place just for the tenants of Wilton Place? Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think the resources that IPUT are putting in place complement our F&B programme. I know there's been talks about maybe a bakery or something like that going in. You can imagine that smell wafting around the park. You're going to go there before you go home. It's just going to happen. So I see people naturally migrating to those things, or if there's a gym, maybe if they do Pilates or something like that. Again, it will complement what we're doing. We're not competing. LinkedIn as a company wants to create kind of economic opportunity for everyone. So we don't want to be that insular that people just stay and just use our resources and then go home. We want them to contribute to the community and to the environment. And during the summer especially, the amount of people that come out here into the park, use the fabulous deck chairs and just sit out and socialise, and they grab a coffee, or they'll go across on the Thursdays when the market is there and they'll grab something there, because people like variety.
What is the place of the development in the public areas that you spend the most time, or that you enjoy spending the most time in?
I spend too much time at my desk or in meetings, but I do love the park. I sometimes come out just to do 2 or 3 laps of the park just to clear my head, and it's great the remodelling that's happened here. You used to not be able to walk close to the canal because it would flood. And even the cranes were getting confused because it would fly over and it would literally be trying to fish on the footpath. The flooding would be that bad. But now with all of the groundworks that have been done, it's water free. So it's just a great place to come out and clear your head, walk around, whether it's an autumnal day today with the leaves on the ground or a summer day. It's just great to have that amenity close by. So the park is my favourite thing.
When you think of a neighbourhood, you think of a streetscape, you think of the hustle and bustle of a street. In that context, you have people from different walks of life. You have independent retailers, you have art shops, you have independent shops. So we're trying to bring an element of that as much as we can. We have 30,000 square feet here, so we don't have a huge amount to play with. But it's to try and bring that streetscape that's 7 days a week to life. So as part of this finished development, we've put in 3 purpose-built artist studios at lower ground level with an exhibition space and a community space. And that's permanent, that's in the fabric of this building. And we're giving over 3 residencies, 2-year residencies to artists to work here. We do that in conjunction with the Royal Hibernian Academy. So we now have 3 artists in residence. We also have a writer in residence in the Georgian apartments that we own nearby. And all of this is to your point about actually showing the community at large that we're serious about building on the legacy that's been here going back 50 years, which is a rich, artistic, cultural, human heritage that we shouldn't overlook. Because an office is an office is an office. What makes an office or a location or a workplace a place is that emotional connection, that human interest. And I think unless you have that, you can't differentiate yourself.
I am Siobhan O'Callaghan. I am a visual artist. I work mainly in paint. I am currently one of the artists in residence at the Wilton Park studio supported by IPUT.
And my name is James Early. I'm an artist based in Dublin. I predominantly make large-scale public works that base themselves around the materiality of stained glass.
We wanted to speak with you under this covered passage because this is exactly the place of your installation and your work. Could you describe what we are seeing in front of us?
This piece of work, it's called Signs of Life. It's my third collaboration and most ambitious with IPUT. And it is a large-scale glass work that is a ceiling. It forms the ceiling of a link between Lad Lane and the square behind us here, Mary Lavin's Place. What you're seeing is a large abstract artwork that takes its inspiration from the canal. And the idea is it plays with the idea of the way we view the piece. We're looking up at the skies, and it plays with this idea of when you look into the reflection of the water in the canal, it reflects the stars at night. So it's like an aspirational piece.
And Siobhan, turning to you now, as you mentioned in your introduction, you are one of the artists in residence here. It is quite a curious thing for a development of this size to have when you are sandwiched in between tenants like Stripe and LinkedIn to also have artist studios. How important has that been for you as an artist to have a creative space in the centre of the city within a development like this?
So I was fortunate enough back in, I think it was 2021, to be selected for one of the RHA IPUT studios just around the corner from where we are now. So I got to see this development in the earlier days and then was invited to return to the new studio at the start of the summer here. So there's been quite a transformation, and it's been really great to see how much IPUT have centred artists and creative work in this. I have a number of extended family members who work in tech, and I never expected to be downstairs from them, but lo and behold, they're across the road from me. They're literally directly above my studio. And I think it's really valuable to build artist spaces into these settings that they might not otherwise be, and to remind people of the value of culture and creativity in our everyday lives.
And I guess for both of you, it's also like a nod to the artistic roots of this neighborhood. How important is it to have this connection back to art and to ensure that people know that despite, the modernity, despite the glossy finishes, that, art still has a role to play in public life?
Like, you're definitely preaching to the converted here. The more public art, the better. I fully believe in that. And I think it's amazing that I put such weight behind, It's really, really important because, like you said, you can have spaces that have a lot going on amenity-wise, but to have like that depth of culture that art brings is very, very important.
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that IPUT are celebrating our artistic heritage and bringing it forwards. I think it's really easy as Irish people to be proud of our culture and the oversized output that we have, the impact we have on an international scale. But I think it's easily forgotten that it is really important to support living artists and like that to centre them in a place that, to be honest, Dublin is not particularly affordable for creative people. Over recent years, we have seen fewer and fewer studio spaces and it becoming more difficult for creatives to support themselves in Dublin. So it's really vitally important that not only for artists these spaces are available to both work in and to showcase our work, but also as a reminder to the people in the area that we exist and that there's value in it.
Now, you did mention that a great inspiration for the piece that we are overlooking here today was the canal. Is this an area of the city where traditionally you'd be, inspired in your work, or are you quite specific when approaching these large-scale projects of trying to, center yourself in the area?
I think it's exactly that, the latter. When I'm doing a large-scale piece that is for a space, it's very much site-specific, so it definitely draws inspiration from the space that it occupies, and very much with the mindset of I create the work, it's there, but it's the people that experience it and that live around the area that take ownership over it. So there's always like a very, very strong sense of just conscientiousness about its placement and who's going to be experiencing it day to day.
I think what gives us a real kick is kids coming in here with their dog, walking around, taking in the biodiversity, the nature, kicking the leaves that are now falling, enjoying the fountain, just being stimulated by that. That's a real joy, because these people are just passers-by. It's local people engaging with the neighbourhood in a real way. The fact that the users of the buildings will also benefit from that is a nice to have, but it's real to see people, like we see here, someone's brought their dog into the park, they're having a little roll around, a little scratch. It's just great to see. They're not working here per se, they're enjoying an amenity that we have, I suppose, had the vision and had the belief and had the resources to do. We've seen it in other places around the world, and that's why some of the people working with us, like Malum, who have been very active in London, have Irish roots. We brought them back to do Wilton Park for us because of their experience, and they've just delivered in spades for us, and the quality of the finishes in our park and our landscaping has drawn people in.
I'm Thomas O'Mahony, or O'Mahony, in Ireland, and I'm Managing Director and owner of Malum Limited. We got involved, I suppose, way back about 4 years ago as a contractor, which was very unusual for a developer to get a contractor involved so early. We've done a lot of projects in UK, like the Battersea Power Station, the likes of King's Cross, and I suppose the partnership started with IPUT coming to see us. They wanted some of our kind of inspiration on how we can develop their design with the architects and kind of develop really good spaces. And I think we've done a fairly decent job here. I think when we left to come over here, we could not see any kind of quality of this kind of standard here. And I think with IPUT's kind of aspiration and their kind of dream of this is what we want to do, it really enticed us to come over to Dublin, because it's our first job in Dublin, to really entice us to do this type of landscaping. But it's a great scheme to be involved in.
Now, obviously, having the park as part of the development and by the canal, the Grand Canal, it almost seems like it would be inevitable to have great landscaping. But that didn't say just on the ground floor. It was also important that all levels of the building sort of reflected that where possible.
Yeah, I think you've got to look at the big shift. And I think a lot from COVID is people want good offices. They're coming back to offices and they want good spaces. They want terraces so people can walk out from their offices and enjoy kind of the environment, the biodiversity, the plants, the flowers. They can sit here at lunch break and look around. You wouldn't believe you're in a city. And I think that's the big shift. And I think IPUT saw that. And to create an office space where you've got 7 terraces, every terrace has almost got its own little landscape space, which is private. You can sit down, you can have functions, you can socialise, or you just can enjoy reading a book at lunchtime, and it's great, and to bring that to the terraces. And a lot of the value of the project is actually on the terraces, and the difficulties on the terraces, the logistics of trying to get this built with cranes through the actual how it's built. But it's a fantastic scheme.
There's 2 elements here. One is the sustainability and resilience side of it, and the other is the plants and the species, and even I saw a birdhouse when we were walking around. So the fact that it's all aspects of biodiversity that were considered. So maybe let's tackle that first, and then we come to the sustainability and resilience side.
Look at biodiversity here, I suppose. They did a kind of a survey of actually the amount of bees and plants. You look at through the summer here, this was alive, absolutely alive. And from a site which was, go back 10, 15 years ago when it was just a kind of boring office space, you look at now, it's the birds, the bees, the insects, the kind of little insect houses we've got around here. It's just created a complete new zone of landscaping on a roof in the middle of Dublin City. It's stunning. We worked with the actual landscape architect, which is Townsend, who are a London-based architect, who their kind of vision with the likes of IPUT is to create this, and it's worked very well.
And at a time that, more and more developments and developers are being considered about, climate resilience and, this idea that also landscaping plays a vital role in absorbing the rainwater, in lowering how hot the pavement can get. That was a big consideration here as well.
Huge, because if you look at here on the roofs here, all the water here is irrigations from the grey supply. Under all the pavement here is like attenuation, so it holds the water in place. It keeps the water in the planting. So it's almost like it's self-recycling the water back into the plant itself. And it works very well. A lot of materials here are locally sourced. The timbers are locally sourced from Ireland. The paving's locally sourced, the steel's locally sourced. So the consideration here of actually using local suppliers and local plants and keeping the actual biodiversity in the water on the roof, it works very well.
I'm curious, seeing the space being so active and used by the whole community, how does it make you feel on a day like today when we were just downstairs and so many people, while it was still sunny, sitting in the sun loungers and enjoying the park, but also, taking advantage of all this environment that you carefully curated?
Yeah, I think it's a special place. As a UK contractor with an Irish name, and I'm from Ireland, to come back and do the projects in London and then come back to a developer who's got the focus of this kind of quality, and then come here and see what you've created. And I come to Dublin probably every 2 weeks. I always walk past it and always walk through here, through the various times of spring and summer. And it just brings a lot of people, and I've been here on weekends, and you've got families enjoying playing little games on the lawn. You've got people walking through, reading their books, the deck chairs. Yeah, it's a special place. It's a special place for me. And there's not many projects. I think you kind of look at projects where you've delivered in your life, like the King's Cross, and you're creating these lovely little kind of great urban spaces. But here, this is special.
Across the road here is the Grand Canal, a very historic canal in Dublin. We collaborated with Waterways Ireland. It's not our property, it's public property. And we approached Waterways Ireland and said, could we replicate the finishes of our park along the canal? It'll be a major draw. It'll actually bring the canal, the public space into the park and just blur the lines between, the commercial space and the public realm. And they did, and over a 2-year period we agreed a design, and now we have a nice gravelled walkway, and you can see how busy the canal is on a day like today. People are using it for running. There's a huge volume of people use this area. We've gone from about 500,000 unique visitors to this park in 2022, 2023 to where we are today. And the park only reopened in October last year to about 1.2 million visitors. And the F&B hasn't opened yet. We're setting the bar quite high for ourselves, but also for the city. And if it brings the standard up, it speaks to us being a catalyst for good in the city, which all cities need at the moment.
Was it a tricky process to move from the values you had on paper and translating it into reality, or actually it was more seamless than it sounds?
But we were convinced that if you go back in time to the Victorian or Georgian period, the most important placemaking initiatives that we've ever seen was the creation of squares, public squares and parks around cities. And they were the social media of their time. So for us to replicate that, we're just repeating some of the best values in history. And Dublin has a history of Georgian squares. We were very fortunate to have a square, or in this case a triangular park, in front of Wilton. And we made that the logo of the development. And when we started leasing this space, and to be fair to LinkedIn and the occupiers that have followed LinkedIn into this location, they could see the benefit of having such a naturally stimulating environment on your doorstep.
Not to put you on the spot, but what is your favourite part of the whole development?
I think the restored fountain, because I remember coming to this park when the fountain was overgrown. It was a storage area for winos. It was a more socially challenging time. It was probably 15, 20 years ago. We didn't own the entire estate at that point. And I distinctly remember that. And then to have the opportunity in my career 15 years later to actually make a difference, put the water back into the fountain, light the fountain, keep it clean, and to see people sitting around that fountain on a Saturday or Sunday having a coffee, just chilling, to me that's the most stimulating and rewarding aspect of this entire development. Never mind the financial returns, because that'll be there long after I'm gone. And I think for me and for my own team, having some purpose like that, bigger than financial returns, is a real motivator.
This concept of, quality of life when it comes to creating spaces in cities, it's so nice to see it actually being a reality and not just a concept on paper. And you can see in all the details throughout the development that. So we look forward to coming back next year and seeing the F&B in place, the new tenants in place, and hopefully more million visitors to this park.
We'll have a marquee set up for you. It'll be great.
Okay, great. I can't wait. Niall, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And that's all for this second special episode of The Urbanist in partnership with IPUT. The Urbanist is produced by Carlotta Ribello and by David Stevens, who also edits the show. I'm Andrew Tuck. Goodbye, and thank you for listening, city lovers.
IPUT Real Estate is Dublin's leading property investment company. For almost 6 decades, they've owned and developed the best workplaces in Ireland, setting standards and attracting global capital to the Irish market. As a gateway to Europe, Dublin is a global centre for investment. IPUT leads the market by delivering innovative, design-led workplaces and public spaces that enhance the occupier experience and neighbourhood life. Their ambition to set new benchmarks in workplace quality, attract leading businesses to Dublin, all while delivering strong, sustainable returns for their investors. Find out how they're building this future. Head to IPUT.com now. IPUT, creator of exceptional places, custodian of the city.